Margaret Thatcher is one of the quite few women who seems to have had any impact on the battle of ideas inside Christopher Hitchens.
Oh, I don't think I could possibly let you say that.
The
Rosa Luxemburg, I mention a lot. Susan Sontag, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, and who I mentioned quite a bit, the most important female intellectual I think to have come out of Africa. Again distinguished by great moral and physical courage. I could go on.
But I did feel that they're as present in your intellectual life in their own right as the men are, as these very intense male friendships, which you put a lot of intellectual effort into analysing,
yes.
which you seem to feel on a deeper level. Would that be fair?
I dare say that's true. I don't have a female intellectual friend with whom I'm as close as I am with, say, Martin or with Ian McEwan. And that's partly because I wouldn't be able to discuss women with them.
There's some small effronteries to feminism along the way, like a drunk woman is worse than a drunk man.
Yes, it is. You don't think so?
No, I don't really think
Think
so.
it's the same?
Yeah.
You don't feel sorry for a drunk woman?
I'd probably feel a slightly sisterly, I would like to look after her and get her home and keep her out of
Well,
danger.
there you are. If you're a
but
man,
it's not worse.
If you're a man, even
morally worse.
If you're a man, even more so, because your protective feeling is aroused, but in a pitying way. You don't want to pity someone. Whereas, if it's a friend of yours, a male, who's had 5 or 6 too many, you feel, oh, you know, poor fool. But you don't feel pity for him. It's not as humiliating. I should have thought that was self-evident.
It's just a sense that women are treated as a separate category for you sometimes when you're...
They're a different gender, a whole different sex. Yes, they are.
Let's talk a bit more about your ideas on military intervention, which is an important part of the book. And just to cut to the chase, you opposed the first Gulf War and you supported the second one. Did you get the order wrong?
Excellent question. I resolve it by saying I have a long chapter in Iraq, and my visits there dating back to the 1970s, the beginning of the Saddam regime, in fact. And what I really think about the period between 1991 and 2003 is that it's all one war that started with the invasion of Kuwait and ends with the overthrow of Saddam Hussein, and should have ended with the overthrow of Saddam Hussein, I now think, in about 1992. It's the terrifying waste of life and society and talent and time in that intervening period that did all the damage, I now think. So I now think I was definitely wrong to have opposed the Kuwait War. And I give what I hope are intelligible reasons for how I changed my mind. I lay it all out, if anyone's interested, and show how there was such a thing as a regime change left, you might say, a constituency of people from the left who got together to argue that Saddam Hussein had to go.
But step by step, apart from wanting to protect the reputation of this group of interventionists on the left...
Vindicate the honour, shall we say. Yes.
Yes, but it would have worked how? And had it gone better, to your mind? What would have happened?
Oh, I quite honestly don't think we can do that now. I mean, we would have to do an entire interview on that, which, by the way, I would come back and do this afternoon if you want.
Well, okay,
but I can tell people to read that chapter.
You can
which I think it's in a book called Hitch 22, which you haven't mentioned yet.
Which will be, which will be mentioned. No fear of that. But so from the end of the first Gulf War, you take up cudgels on behalf of regime change, which becomes the intervention.
Yes,
that is the Iraq War. And I wonder, and I talk here as someone who also wrote about it at length, and whose position was not dissimilar at all from your own. But I think some of us felt very deeply then that when it went wrong, and it did go wrong, that our responsibility was, I mean, it was both extremely saddening and sometimes almost kind of embarrassing, because one supported something for good reasons which turned out to cost a lot more lives on both sides than perhaps we had envisaged, and which the aftermath of which is still with us today.
Well, that's fine. Let me take that then, because I do not want you to think in the least that I'm ducking it. When we talk about things having gone wrong, what we talk about is the appalling spread of violence and sabotage across Baghdad and the other cities and indeed the countryside of a lot of Iraq. That's entirely the responsibility of the Ba'ath Party and its horrible alliance with Al-Qaeda, which we had constantly, if anything, underestimated. These are the worst people in the world. And of course we had not thought enough about how to put down this venomous foe. It took us a long time to get to the stage where we could start exacting the price from them that needed to be exacted. Now, the other was to kill them. But that's not a criticism of the principle of liberation of Iraq.
But it is a principle of the world's most powerful nation leading a war and not adequately preparing for what it was going to do when it had won it. And I just wondered then what you feel the correct balance of criticism is.
If the period before the final United Nations debate had been of this sort, he would have said, all right, we all agree, the private ownership of Iraq by Saddam Hussein and his crime family, its record of invading neighbours, of committing genocide, of using and concealing weapons of mass destruction and so on, is intolerable. We must all take counsel about how to move Iraq into the next phase, how to make sure that its people are taken care of. If everyone had been doing that, that would have been very good. Instead, there were unbelievable campaigns of libel, which one had to fend off the entire time. You're doing this to please the Israelis. And you're doing it because you're trying to steal Iraq's oil. Saddam Hussein is a secularist. All kinds of unbelievable drivel and falsification, which meant that all the times that could have been spent on how shall we rescue the Iraqis in Iraq was wasted in a pointless argument where countries like France and Russia and China were hoping to benefit from their trade relationship with Saddam Hussein and benefit also from any embarrassment that might be suffered by the United States or Britain.
And an unlikely
It is those people, I say, who owe the explanation. They're the ones who should be held to account. They don't think they should be. They think everything they did was righteous. They were liars, they were cynics, they were cheats. They are the ones who owe the explanation, not me.
Christopher Hitchens and Hitch 22, a memoir, is published this Thursday by Atlantic Books.